The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the broken city where Eli wandered. The empty streets, once bustling with life, were silent, except for the occasional distant crash of crumbling infrastructure. Eli, a sprightly figure not yet in his teens, was a spot of color against the gray desolation with his patchwork jacket and a shock of unruly hair. On this evening, his search for food and supplies had brought him to the outskirts, where nature was reclaiming the land. It was here, among the vines and rust, that he found Titan. The dog was a hulking figure, his coat matted, a fusion of flesh and metal, evidence of a war long ended but still raging in the scars it left behind. With gentle hands and a soothing voice, Eli approached the wary animal. He offered food, but it was the unspoken understanding, the shared loneliness in their eyes that formed the immediate bond. Titan, with a gear that hummed faintly of forgotten battles, stood up, his stature and presence more akin to a sentinel than a mere pet. As night approached, they made their way back to Eli's makeshift home, a library with walls lined with books, untouched by looters who had no use for stories. It was here Eli pored over texts of technology and history, his young mind grasping the concepts that might repair Titan's mysterious gear. Together they were an odd pair, a boy wise beyond his years and a warrior dog out of time. But in a world that had seen the end of days, they were each other's kin. As the stars blinked above, through the hole in the roof, Eli felt the first stirrings of hope. With Titan by his side, maybe, just maybe, he could find a new beginning. And perhaps, in the vast silence of the apocalypse, they could write a different ending. Their first night together was a pact without words. Titan, the protector, watched as Eli, exhausted from the day's scavenging, fell into a restless sleep. And in the quiet, the dog whose war had ended found a new charge to guard, a human child who had not yet given up on the world. As dawn's light pierced the remnants of glass in the library windows, Eli was already awake, his eyes fixed on the antique clock whose hands had long since stopped. Time was a concept he had learned to measure by the sun and his stomach, both of which urged him to rise. Titan lay beside him, a silent, steady presence, as the boy meticulously packed his backpack with gear for the day. Their destination was the marketplace, or what once passed for one. Rumors had whispered their way through the city's skeletal remains about a cache of batteries and wires, essentials for anyone trying to mend the old world's gadgets. And for Eli, they were the key to understanding the complex machinery melded into Titan's form. The journey was perilous, a balancing act atop the ruins of civilization. They skirted around the edges of known gang territories and navigated through streets that nature had turned into treacherous green mazes. Titan proved his worth 100-fold, his enhanced senses detecting threats that Eli's human faculties could not perceive. And when a pack of feral drones buzzed overhead, their intentions clear in their relentless scanning, it was Titan's sudden leap and jaw clamped on metal that saved them, his body a shield for Eli. In the marketplace, the promised goods were buried under a stall's collapsed roof. Eli's eyes lit up as Titan's paw unearthed the first glimmering wire. Together they scavenged, a dance of two beings understanding the worth of forgotten treasures. It was here that the true extent of the bond between boy and beast showed as they worked in unison, silent communication perfected in mere days. But as the sun reached its zenith and their backpacks swelled with spoils, the crackle of a radio left behind by a less fortunate soul caught Eli's attention. It was a distress call, weak but insistent, an echo of other survivors out there, somewhere. Eli's fingers hesitated on the dial. The decision was his, to reach out and risk the dangers of human treachery, or to ignore the call and continue their solitary existence. Looking into Titan's knowing eyes, Eli made his choice. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about humanity. It was about finding the others. It was about hope. With Titan at his side, his warrior dog, Fear, wasn't an option. They were the heralds of the dawn, and they would answer the call. Eli's decision to respond to the distress call set them on a new path, one that promised not only increased peril, but the possibility of community, a word that had seemed almost mythic in the desolation of the apocalypse. With the map sketched hurriedly in his notebook, Eli led Titan away from the safety of their known scavenging routes, heading towards the source of the transmission. The signal had come from the industrial sector, a part of the city that had been a maze of factories and warehouses before the fall. Now it was a graveyard of its former self, buildings gutted by looters or destroyed in the last days of the collapse. The air here was thick with the metallic tang of rust and the deeper cloying scent of chemical decay. As they moved through the shadows of giant, silent machinery, Titan's posture changed, his body tensing with every step. He was alert, his senses finely tuned to danger, a living shield for the boy who trusted him implicitly. It was Titan who paused first, his ears perking at a sound so slight that Eli barely caught it. A soft, rhythmic tapping, like a heart beating against the cold metal. Guided by Titan's superior senses, they navigated through a labyrinth of derelict equipment until they found the source, a small group of survivors, barricaded inside what used to be a metalworker's shop. They were a ragtag bunch, 2 men, a woman, and a child. No older than Eli, all gaunt and wide-eyed with prolonged fear. The initial encounter was tense. The survivors had not expected a response to their call, much less from a boy and his biomechanical dog. But as Titan's imposing form settled quietly beside Eli, the group slowly relaxed, recognizing the sincerity in Eli's offer of assistance. They learned that the group had been mechanics and engineers, caught outside their homes when the event struck. They had essential skills but lacked the defensive capabilities that Eli and Titan brought. In exchange for their technical knowledge, especially in enhancing Titan's capabilities, Eli offered them protection, proposing a partnership that could benefit both parties. As they shared their stories, the engineers revealed their project, a half-completed vehicle, armored and capable of carrying them beyond the city to a rumored safe zone. It was an ambitious plan, fraught with risks, but with Titan's enhancements and Eli's navigation skills, suddenly attainable. That night, under the flickering light of a salvaged lamp, the group worked together, their plans growing more robust with each shared idea. Titan lay by Eli's side, his sensors occasionally flickering online, a silent sentinel in the darkness. The atmosphere was charged with a newfound energy, a sense of purpose that had been missing from Eli's world since the beginning of the end. With the engineer's expertise and Titan's strength, they could make the impossible seem possible. They were no longer fragments of a lost world, but architects of whatever lay ahead. This new alliance, born out of necessity and fortified by mutual respect, was their first real hope of carving out a future in the chaos that had claimed civilization. As they planned, Eli felt a profound shift within him, a shift from surviving to living and perhaps, in time, even thriving. The project they embarked upon was more than a matter of survival. It became a symbol of their rebirth amid ruins. The small warehouse that served as their shelter and workshop buzzed with activity as Eli, Titan, and the newly found allies turned their collective focus on restoring the armored vehicle. They dubbed it Haven, a name that carried their hopes of reaching a place of safety. Eli split his time between scavenging for parts with Titan and learning the basics of mechanics and engineering from the survivors. The woman, named Clara, took a special interest in teaching him, impressed by his quick understanding and unyielding determination. As they worked, Eli couldn't help but feel a burgeoning sense of kinship, a family formed not by blood, but by the shared goal of escaping the dead city. Titan proved invaluable, not just as a protector, but as an integral part of their operations. His built-in systems, once mysterious and partly dormant, were now better understood thanks to the engineers. They managed to enhance his sensory modules and repair his damaged servos, increasing his effectiveness both in and out of combat. As days turned into weeks, the walls of the warehouse were filled with diagrams and maps, routes plotted with cautious optimism. The vehicle's frame was fortified, its engine overhauled to run on the scarce fuel they managed to hoard. Every component was tested, every potential failure debated and prepared for. Haven was becoming less of a dream and more of a tangible escape plan. However, the noise and light of their industrious sanctuary didn't go unnoticed. One evening, as the sun cast long shadows over the broken skyline, a scout drone, unlike the feral ones they'd previously encountered, hovered at the edge of their safe zone. It was sleeker, more sophisticated, and marked with insignias that none of them recognized, signs of a new threat or perhaps a remnant of the old world's military powers. The presence of the drone was a stark reminder that, despite their progress, danger was never far away. The group held a tense meeting that night. Discussions were had about whether to accelerate their departure or fortify their position. Clara advocated for caution, while Marco, one of the engineers, argued that waiting only increased their risk of being discovered. Eli, listening to the back and forth, realized the weight now placed on his young shoulders. The decision they made could very well determine their fates. Looking to Titan for reassurance, he found it in the dog's calm, steady gaze. With a deep breath, he voiced his opinion, suggesting a middle ground. They would prepare to leave at a moment's notice, but also set up defenses to protect the warehouse. The decision made, they all returned to their tasks with renewed urgency. Under Eli's guidance, they rigged alarms and traps around the perimeter, turning their temporary home into a fortress. Inside, Haven's final adjustments were made, ensuring it could carry them across whatever terrain lay between them and the sanctuary they sought. Each night, as Eli lay beside Titan, the map of their planned route under his fingers, he felt the dual weights of fear and excitement. The world outside was vast and unknown, but for the first time he felt they might just have the means and the will to traverse it. With each passing day, their departure grew nearer, and their dreams of safety felt a little less like fantasy and a little more like a future within grasp. The morning they decided to leave came unexpectedly. A storm had blown in overnight, its fierce winds and relentless rain masking the sounds of approaching danger. It was Titan's restless behavior that alerted them first. His enhanced sensors, never fully offline, picked up the vibrations of approaching vehicles through the tempest. With no time to debate, Eli and his group sprang into action. Clara and Marco hurriedly loaded the last of their supplies into Haven, while Eli and Titan scanned the perimeter. The engineers had turned the vehicle into a formidable machine, its armor plating and reinforced glass promising a semblance of safety in the unpredictable world outside. As dawn broke, the rain subsided, and the threat became visible. Several armored vehicles, remnants of a military faction, had surrounded the warehouse. Their intentions were unclear, but the group wasn't going to wait to find out. Eli, with a calm born of necessity, directed everyone into Haven. He took the driver's seat, Titan by his side, as Clara provided cover fire from an improvised turret atop the vehicle. The warehouse doors burst open, and Haven roared to life, its engine a thunderous counterpart to the storm's fading growls. Eli navigated through the wreckage-strewn streets, the map etched both in his mind and on the digital display they had rigged up from scavenged parts. The military faction, surprised by their sudden escape, scrambled to pursue, but the conditions worked in Haven's favor. Driving through flooded streets and debris, Eli managed to evade their pursuers with Titan's guidance. The dog's enhanced hearing and sight identified safe paths and alerted Eli to obstacles long before they became visible. Their escape was a breathless blur of narrow misses and sharp turns, a testament to the weeks of preparation and teamwork. Once they had put enough distance between themselves and their pursuers, the group allowed themselves a moment of relief. The atmosphere inside Haven was charged with adrenaline, but beneath it was an undercurrent of triumph. They had escaped not just the clutches of a formidable enemy, but also the suffocating ruins of their past lives. With the city limits behind them, the landscape opened up into vast, uncharted territories. The road was rough, more a suggestion than a defined path, but Haven handled it with the sturdiness of a ship braving choppy waters. Eli felt every bump and jolt, each one a reminder of the freedom they were fighting to secure. As they traveled, the radio, set to scan frequencies, crackled to life. Amidst the static, they caught snippets of broadcasts, other groups of survivors, each carving out their existence. Eli tuned into these fragments of human voices, their words weaving a tapestry of resilience that stretched across the devastated lands. Their journey wasn't just about reaching a safe zone anymore. It was about connecting these dots of humanity, rekindling a network of survivors. As Titan rested his head on Eli's lap, The boy looked out at the horizon, where the sun was now a clear, bright orb in a sky washed clean by the storm. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, but it was a road they were finally equipped to travel. Eli felt a quiet resolve settle in his heart. They were no longer just fleeing. They were moving forward, building a path to a new life. Days blended into each other as Haven trudged along the makeshift roads carved out from the remnants of the old world. Their journey was a testament to resilience, as they faced not just natural obstacles, but remnants of hostile groups scattered across the landscape. Each encounter tested their resolve and the strength of their armored vehicle, which, under Clara's expert guidance, became more than just shelter. It was their guardian. As they moved further from the city, the land revealed its scars and stories. Eli mapped their route meticulously, marking areas of danger and points of interest where they might find resources or allies. His leadership was quiet but firm, shaped by the necessity of keeping everyone safe, including Titan, who had become more than a companion. His instincts often alerted them to hidden dangers or opportunities. One crisp morning, as the first light painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Titan's ears perked up, his body tensed. He directed his gaze toward a dense thicket beside the road. The group stopped, trusting his senses. Hidden among the brush were survivors, a family, emaciated and desperate. They had been hiding from a rogue drone patrol, surviving off the land, scared and isolated. Eli and his group approached them cautiously, communicating their peaceful intentions. The family, after initial hesitance, shared their story of escape from a nearby settlement taken over by a militant group. They spoke of a cache of supplies left behind, essential for both survival and for fortifying Haven further. Seeing an opportunity to help and strengthen their own chances, Eli proposed a rescue mission. It was risky, but with their new vehicle and combined skills, it was possible. The family, seeing the determination and resources that Eli's group possessed, agreed to guide them. They reached the settlement by nightfall, under the cover of darkness. The plan was simple: retrieve the supplies without alerting the militants. Titan and Eli scouted ahead, using the dog's enhanced night vision to avoid patrols. Clara and Marco stayed back, guarding the family and readying Haven for a quick escape. The operation was tense, each moment stretched thin by the risk of discovery, but their planning paid off. They retrieved medical supplies, food rations, and even found mechanical parts that could enhance Haven's defensive capabilities. The return to Haven was a quiet celebration, their hearts lighter with the success of their mission and the addition of new allies. As they drove away from the settlement, the family shared stories of other survivors and possible safe zones that might still exist. This information was gold in a world where communication lines were broken. Eli realized that their journey could be more than just a search for safety. It could be a mission to reconnect the scattered fragments of humanity. With new supplies and renewed purpose, the group's dynamics shifted. They were no longer just survivors, but active participants in rebuilding a semblance of society. Each member brought their strength to the table, and Eli, with Titan by his side, found himself at the heart of a new community on wheels. Their path was fraught with unknowns, but each challenge brought them closer, turning a disparate group of strangers into a family, bound by the common goal of forging a path through a world reborn from ashes. As Haven continued its journey, the landscape began to change, transitioning from the barren outskirts to areas once lush and now trying to reclaim their greenery. The more they traveled, the more signs of life they encountered, not just the desperate or the predatory, but communities striving to rebuild amidst the ruins. Eli's map was no longer just a series of routes and resources. It became a living document, charting hope and connections. Each successful encounter with other survivors added layers to their mission, transforming their quest from mere survival to one of rebuilding a network of human resilience. One afternoon, as they navigated through a valley flanked by forested hills, they stumbled upon an old broadcast station, its satellite dishes looming like forgotten giants against the sky. The possibility of restoring communication with a broader area was too valuable to ignore. The group decided to stay and attempt to bring the station back online. The task was daunting. The technology was decades old, and nature had claimed much of the infrastructure. Yet, the combined expertise of the engineers and Eli's unrelenting determination turned the impossible into a tangible goal. Clara took charge of repairing the electrical systems while Marco focused on the mechanical parts. Eli and Titan patrolled the area, ensuring the safety of their temporary base. Days turned into weeks as they worked on the station. During this time, they fortified the perimeter, turning the broadcast station into a defensible outpost. They encountered a few scouting parties from rogue factions, but Haven and their preparations held strong, repelling each threat. These skirmishes underscored the importance of their work at the station, not just for them, but for all who sought safety and connection in the chaotic world. Finally, with a whir of life and a hum of energy, the station crackled back to life. The first broadcast was a simple message, looped to reach as far as the signal could carry, a call for peace, for unity, for assistance. They shared their location and their mission, inviting other survivors to join or seek refuge. The response was more immediate than any of them had anticipated. Calls came in, not just from nearby, but from distances that they hadn't dared to hope could be reached. Stories poured in, of communities fighting back against rogue factions, of families separated by chaos now given a beacon to aim for, of scientists and doctors working in isolation now seeking collaboration. Eli took charge of coordinating these communications, his innate leadership blossoming as he became a central node in the emerging network. Titan, ever vigilant, became a symbol of the strength and protection they offered at their new base. As the sun set one evening, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold, Eli stood by the broadcast controls, Titan at his side, and looked out over the hills. The world was still a dangerous place, full of unknowns and threats, but now they were not just drifting through it, they were shaping it, connecting it, giving it voice. Their journey had led them to become more than survivors or wanderers. They were rebuilders of the human spirit, architects of a new dawn. And as the stars began to twinkle on, Eli felt a profound connection to the world he was helping to weave together. A world where hope was not just a fleeting shadow, but a light that burned steadily into the future.